Hey everybody, Corey here coming at you with another knife review video. Today we are taking a look at the Machinewise Mojave. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. I try to put out new knife related content on a semi-regular basis. It changes all the time. Let's just get moving into, well, let's start with what you get actually, right? You get the knife. A lot of people are interested in the box. The box is locked with this threaded screw, which is actually a T15 Torx bit that you can use to service the knife. You take the top off the box. Maybe you do. I don't know why that's so firm. You take the top off the box. You've got some, what do they call this? Graphene pivot lubricant. And then let me just show you. The blade actually sits. It fits firmly, snugly in this slot. You can see there's a cutout in the shape of the blade, and it actually has decent retention. I mean, it's not falling off, so it's actually kind of friction fit. So that's kind of cool. I'll get this stuff out of the frame, and then the last thing I'll say is, ooh, look at the inside of the box. Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that doing? There's a little slot for your certificate of authenticity. So if you're into that sort of thing, and again, it's got retention, so it doesn't come falling out. That's where your certificate of authenticity resides. But without further ado, let's get started with the size comparisons. I've got one that I think is pretty relevant, so we'll just put the Sonora, not the Sonora, the Mojave. Did I say Sonora to begin with? I hope not. It's a Mojave. Mojave next to the Ontario Knives Rat number 2. You can see that it is obviously larger than the Rat number 2. What isn't? But it's not an absolutely massive knife, because here it is next to, and we'll flip this upside down, Spyderco PM2. And I remember kind of sitting these on top of each other, and it's basically the exact same size as a PM2. So if you're familiar with that, then there's a point of reference for you. And then last but not least, I will put it up next to something that we're going to be talking about a decent amount this video. This is the Craig Brown Cortex, V2 technically, whatever. It comes in about maybe a quarter of an inch longer in overall length than the Craig Brown Cortex. Probably a little relevant, because if you're looking at a knife in this price range, you might have already handled a knife in this price range. So that's one of the reasons that I'm showing the Cortex, and the Cortex will make it'll make another appearance later on in the video. Let's move on. So what you're actually going to see me doing a lot in this video is comparing this to other knives in this price range, and let's start with that. This is going to run you, on average, it depends on the finishes that you pick, the anodization that you pick, all that kind of stuff. You pay for the upgrades. But I'm just going to say $850, right? It starts at about $815. It can go up to like $925, depending on how fancy you want to get with it, but it's going to run you about $850. And so that's kind of what you're looking at. Holt, you're looking at Skiff, you're looking at Koenig, you're looking at Grimsmo, you're looking at Craig Brown, you're looking at probably some secondhand Hermans. I don't know if you can get like a plain Jane Herman at this point for this price, but let's go down the line. Let's start with the Ergos. I'm gonna put this up here because this is what I was thinking about, right? I would say the Mojave, it's kind of okay on the Ergos, and I'll talk about why. But on average, I would say it is pretty much in line with a Skiff, a Grimsmo, or a Craig Brown. But I would say it is inferior to a Curtis, a Chris Reeve, a Lamech, Holt, or Koenig. Let's talk about why. Let's start with some of the things that I do actually like, and I'll kind of lump some usability stuff in with the Ergos. The finger choil is nice. That is a finger choil. It's not a sharpening choil. And you know that it's a finger choil. Well, I mean, one, it's just big enough to be a finger choil. But two, they put jimping up here on the knife. And I really, really like that choice. I like that they put jimping up there so that you have something when you inevitably use the finger choil. This, ironically, not everything that gets put on every knife these days is actually intended to be used. But this screams, hey, we do actually want you to use that finger choil, okay? So maybe use this jimping too. The same exact jimping is back here. About half of it is kind of invalidated by the scale because you can't really get a purchase on the jimping with the scale in the way, but you can still get your thumb there when you're in the middle of a saber grip or something like that. The knife is relatively thin, and of course the pocket clip, it's not a hot spot. I mean, it's a flat, heavily chamfered pocket clip. There's not going to be any problems there. But, you know, it's a relatively neutral grip, and you kind of get this feeling that you, in my opinion, you get a little bit of a feeling that you're kind of falling off the knife because of what's going on with my pinky. And this isn't unique to the Mojave, but it's on the Mojave. Anytime the end of a handle does this and sweeps backwards, I just find that whatever finger is interacting with that, which is inevitably like your pinky, unless you've got massive hands, it just kind of feels like you can't really keep it there, or you don't really know how you want it to sit there. And so it sits a little funky for me. And then the only other thing I'll say, the lock bar stands pretty proud of the show side scale, and it comes to a pretty fine edge. And what that means is, I'll tell you all day long, even when I'm not, really using this thing, it really does just kind of dig into the crease of my finger. I'm going to be honest, even though the edges are chamfered and scalloped and a little bit rounded there, just having such a thin, tiny piece of metal making so much contact with your finger, it's uncomfortable. I gotta be honest, it's uncomfortable. I have to say it. In terms of the milling itself, obviously the milling patterns vary, but from what I can tell, the consistency and the texture of the milling is the same in that there aren't sharp edges. Like, this isn't catching on your pants. It's extremely smooth, so you don't have to worry about that. And it's not going to give you any blisters as you're sitting there with it in your hand. I will say, you know what? Hammer grip, pretty good. It doesn't quite run into that issue with the lock bar, because you create a gap almost when you're in a full-on hammer grip. But that saber grip, it's really digging into kind of the crease of my finger. And I gotta be honest, Ergos, you tell me to give it a rating. I give it kind of like a 6. I just feel like it's very thin, but it's very tall, and it's got the slope back here, and the lock bar kind of hurts my hands, and it's not terrible, right? It gets a 6 basically by virtue of being a neutral, inoffensive grip, but it just doesn't blow my mind. So that's what I'll say about Ergos. Next, let's move into carry. This is another one where I just kind of lump it in with things. So I'd say it carries like a Grimsma, a Craig Brown, or a Holt, or just as well, rather. And it carries a little bit better than a Curtis, a Chris Reeve, a Lamech. I had Holt on the left, but I changed my mind. A Koenig or a Skiff. And let's talk about why. This one's going to be fast. There's one primary reason that this carries so well. Oh boy. Oh, it's so thin. It's so thin, and it's that thing that's a double-edged sword, right? Because I feel like that thinness is part of what contributes a little bit to the kind of bizarre ergonomic feeling that I ran into. But there's no denying, this thing disappears in your pocket. And I don't know if you can really see it from here, the entire thing is milled on both sides of those scales. The internal milling is there, right? And it's heavy. The milling is heavy, which makes the knife light. So, for a knife this size, it's the size of a PM2. Let me whip that out, actually. We can get the specs. It's just objectively lighter than a PM2, right? Or at least the PM2 when I had my titanium scales on it. But still, this is titanium, so whatever. It's not that heavy, and it's super, super, super thin. So honestly, it carries well. It's like an A-tier carry. For carry, just because it's a little heavy, it's not the end of the world, but we're not talking about a bug out here. I'd give it a 9. I'd give it a 9 out of 10 on carry. Moving on. All right, moving into the action. Where do I put it? I put it kind of dead center. I say it's about equal with a Skiff. Not the same type of action, but the same kind of smoothness. Better than a Curtis, a Chris Reeve, and a Lamech, but it just... I wish I could demonstrate the gap in these arrows, because when I say that It's not as good as a Craig Brown, a Holt, a Koenig, or a Grimsmo. The gap here is really, really, really big. And I don't want to be too aggressive about that, but guess what? Of those knives, as you saw in the beginning of this video, I still have my Craig Brown Cortex, right? And, oh my God, the Cortex, I'll be buried with my Cortex. I promise I'm not just biased. There's a reason that I love my Cortex. There's a reason that I keep my Cortex, and I deem it worthy, because if you know me, you would know that I've let knives go that were far more expensive than the Cortex. The Cortex is so well made in every aspect of the dang knife. But if you want to talk action, oh my dear. And this isn't just about gravity shut, by the way. I'm not saying that the Cortex has a better action than the Mojave because it's gravity shut. The Cortex happens to be gravity shut, but the Cortex is also a literal, in my opinion, 10 out of 10. There is nothing you could change about this action in my brain to make it better. It is, I've said this before about some other knives that are pretty darn good. It's like polished glass riding on polished glass. There is no friction. If I close my eyes, I literally can't tell that the blade is moving. I literally cannot tell when the blade is in motion. Now, not only is the Mojave, look, don't get me wrong, in terms of gravity shut, it's a hair away. It's just a hair away. And that is about tension in the pivot. It's not about lock bar tension, right? So there's not really a lot you can do. You know, in a 1 to 10 gravity shut, it's like a 9. It's almost a 9.5. It's like it takes nothing. But that's just talking about gravity shut. The reality is, let me bring this up to the camera. Let me see if you can hear this. I don't know if you can hear that, but you feel it. You feel it. That's all I'm going to say. Those other knives on my list, if you've handled a Holt, if you've handled a Grimsmo, if you've handled a Koenig, if you've handled like a Craig Brown, you just get it. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm sorry if there's no point of reference for you guys here, if you haven't handled a knife like the ones that I listed, but I'm guessing if you're looking at this knife, you may have dabbled in this price range for a little bit. I'm telling you, there's just no comparison. They're not on the same level. It doesn't matter if I use grease. It doesn't matter if I use graphene. It doesn't matter if I use KPL. It doesn't matter if I loosen the pivot. They're just not on the same level. I will leave it there. No, you know what? I won't leave it there for action because I do have to talk about something else. I must. I'm going to be honest. People say, I think these are people who might just, they're either serious or they're liars. They might have buyer's remorse. I don't know. People say, oh, it has a snappy, it has a crisp detent, a very crisp detent. Let me tell you, this is one of the firmest detents I've ever felt on a knife. It's so firm, I was almost convinced there was something wrong with it. If you put any, I know I sound like I'm being dramatic, if you put any pressure on this lock bar when you're trying to open it, it just exponentially magnifies how hard it is because the detent is already so firm. If you interfere with that lock bar at all, it becomes either painful to successfully open, or it becomes so firm that you physically cannot open it until you get your fingers off that lock bar. It is insane. And so the funny thing is, even if you don't need a knife to be gravity shut, right, really smooth, and you can drop it shut like that, this thing, even if you learn to keep your fingers off the lock bar, honestly, not comfortable to fidget with. It hurts my finger, and even the reverse flick, oh my middle finger is still bruised from trying to flip this thing. You can do it, but you must make sure your fingers are off the lock bar. And yes, can you train your muscle memory to be that way? Of course you can. Do you also basically have to think about the way you're touching this knife every single time you open it? Yes. And so from a fidget perspective, I know some of you don't care about a fidget perspective, but a lot of people see this knife and they go, oh my God, it has a fuller. I can reverse flick it. And I see people reverse flick it. Do you hear that, dude? Bam. And that's not a good bam. It's the detent is so firm that it slams open. A little bit less with the flipper tab, but my God, it's a firm detent. All I'm going to say, if you're buying this and you know it's like $850, $900 and you're saying, look, I'm telling myself, I know I'm not going to use this thing, but at least I'll play with it at my desk. I'm telling you, you're probably not going to enjoy playing with it at your desk. That's all I'll say. Moving on. Last but not least, let's talk about cutting. I place this top tier with Koenig and Craig Brown. I place it above Curtis, Chris Reeve, Ergonomics, Skiff, Grimsmo, and Holt. However, I made this a couple of days ago, and I had my dad come over, and I had my dad take a look at this knife, and he made a comment, and it resonates with me. This card says cutting, but I want to amend that, and I want to say slicing, and there's a difference. There's a difference. One's more specific. Look at that. Oh, mama. Look at how thin you get when you go out to that tip. Even just out to here, right? They start grinding it aggressively. They start the distal taper heavy right here. Heavy drop off. And then it gets thinner and thinner and thinner out to that tip. Boy, I can tell you that this knife slices like a dream, right? If you're doing this kind of stuff, if you're doing this, getting in your Amazon boxes with a $900 knife, or if you're, I don't know, you get it, slicing. Slicing is fantastic. And you know what? In general, I would say there's no doubt in my mind this thing could cut. However, what did Father Practical Blades say? The first thing he said, he looked at it, he goes, man, snap. And there will be a video of him checking this knife out. He just looked at the tip and he goes, snap. And I looked at the tip and I went, ah, crap. I didn't think about that. And look, we want to use our knives. We really want to use our knives, but there's just no denying if you're doing any serious work out by the tip, you don't want it to be with this knife. You just don't. I mean, come on. It's a blessing and a curse. A tip that fine. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing slicer, but my God, you better hope you don't run into a staple, a screw, a nail, whatever you might be doing. I don't know, bone. I don't know what you're cutting with your Mojave. But that kind of bums me out. It kind of bums me out because what I was going to initially say in this review, this was going to be my summary, right? Here comes what was going to be my summary. My summary was going to be, you know what, in terms of stacking up against other knives at this price range, it doesn't keep up on action. It doesn't keep up so much on ergos. And I would even argue the milling, I think it would be, it's not that the milling is low quality, but I think the milling would be more impressive if this thing was contoured. It's just flat slabs of titanium. But I'll leave it there. I'll leave that there. What this thing excels at, remember, this was what I was going to say. Carry, as we discussed, right? Super thin. And cutting, right? And what I was going to say is, if you're going to buy a knife in this price range, and you actually intend to use it, I would recommend the Mojave. I would say that this is the winner across the vast majority of knives in this price range. Maybe a Koenig, maybe an Arius would match this thing, I would say. But where does this stand out? Cutting and carrying. But I have to amend it. I am no longer saying cut whatever you want with this thing. I'm no longer saying if you want to take a $900 knife to the job site, this is the one that you're taking to the job site. No. This is the one, whatever you're going to do with it, as far as slicing is concerned, go for it. Slicing. That's it. Slicing. Maybe some push cuts on rope. Nothing that is hard, nothing that might bend it, nothing that involves prying, none of that. You're going to snap this thing off and you're going to be a sad, sad person. Do I still think it's the best for slicing and for carrying in this price range? Yeah, I mean, I do. I still do. You really can't beat that carry profile in the pocket. It's really fantastic. Nick Shabazz might say something about it having a pocket pecker. You know, I don't know. It's 2026. I don't think we're there anymore. But if you were to ask me what place this has in a collection, or just to own in general, maybe you don't collect knives, but you own it. I would say someone who wants to use their knife, and I'm just going to be blunt about it, someone who kind of gets off to spending more money, someone who gets off to having a luxury good in their pocket, right? Because, hey, guess what else slices pretty well? Hey, there's the old Rat 2 for $37. Or if you want to get bougie, yay, there's the PM2 for, what, you can get these for $200 now? Don't tell me that doesn't slice. That's all Spyderco does is slice, right? So, you know, I'm not saying you have to go get a Mojave if you want to slice things. I'm just saying that that's what it excels at, especially compared to other knives in this price range. So let's get some final thoughts here. All right, final thoughts. The Mojave, okay? It's beautiful. It's nice. You can get it customized. They got a custom shop. You can pick whatever you want. And right now, the lead time is only 2 months. So you can get exactly the Mojave you want within 2 months. Brand new. Yeah, you're going to pay about $850, but you know, what you're getting into. That's not really a surprise. It's not the fidget monster that some people make it out to be. And I think that's something that really needs to be discussed. Because, let's be honest, a lot of you don't want to hear it. Not a lot of people use their $1,000 knives. They just don't. I'm sorry if you don't like it. That's the reality. They don't. They fidget with them at their desk. They admire them from time to time, and they sit in a box, and that's okay. That's what some people like. But it's kind of hard to recommend this against something like, here comes a Craig Brown. You know, it's kind of hard to recommend it because, in my opinion, Craig Brown, better action, decent carry, still a great cutter, right? In my opinion, more impressive milling, generally more impressive anodizations, but that's kind of subjective, right? It's just difficult for me with the Mojave because it's a $900 knife that excels at being carried and cutting, and the reality is most people don't carry or cut with their $900 knives. And so it's almost this weird fantasy of the Mojave is the pricey USA made knife that you buy if you're actually going to cut with it, or if you want to convince your friends that you're going to cut with it, but you don't actually, right? I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to be real. I've handled a lot of knives in this. I've handled all of those knives on that list, right? The Holt, the Koenig, the Skiff, the Grimsmo, the Alamic, it's just all of them, right? I've touched them. I've felt them. That's what I'm walking away with. Those are the feelings that I have about the Mojave. Guys, if you're interested in anything else about this knife, just let me know. Drop a comment below. I'm happy to have a conversation about it. But yeah, where does it sit? It's the expensive knife you buy if you want to use it. Don't get too excited about fidgeting with it. And I don't know. I wanted to love this one. And you know what? Here, let me give you a closing. Let me give you a closing kind of word for how serious I am about how this knife just really isn't for me, right? This has a date of birth of 12/17. That is a very meaningful number to me. It was my grandparents' lucky number. And I was very excited when I saw this knife pop up. I almost exclusively jumped it because it had a date of birth of 12/17. And I thought I would keep it forever. But I'm not. It's getting sold. I bought it on Reddit. I'm going to sell it on Reddit. Even with that date of birth, it's not quite there for me at this price point. I know I'm picky, but I've kept other knives around. You see the Craig Brown, it's still here. I'm not just throwing everything away. I'm just very selective about my collection, and this one's not for me. Might be for you, it's not for me. All right, this video is already too long. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I will see you all next time.